All right, let's talk about the backup strategy. We're going to do the create a backup strategy to protect your data. Now, what is a backup strategy? Well, it's the general philosophy that you use to build your backup plan. It's the philosophy that you're going to use to protect your data using backups. That's basically your backup strategy. What you're going to do to develop your backup strategy, you're going to definitely assess your data. In the same way, let's say if you're a boxer or a sports team, you're going to assess what you have to work with. If you're going to do a project, you're going to assess what you have to work with. And it's no different with backups. You're going to assess the data. What kind of data do you have? You have like bunch of Word document or Office documents. Do you have lots of media, for example, videos or images? If you're a photographer, or a movie or a video creator, your files are going to be a lot larger than someone who just works with Office files like word processing and spreadsheets. You're going to classify the data. You determine what's critical and what's not critical and everything in between, because those classifications you can use to determine some specifics on how you're going to do your backups. And with all this, you're going to estimate the amount of data that you have to back up. How much data do you need to back up? All right, do you need 500 gig? You need a terabyte, 2 terabyte, 3 terabyte, 4 terabyte? All right, that's going to be important because you're going to need to purchase storage for your backups, whether it's cloud or a NAS or some other device. You're going to need to put your backups somewhere. We'll talk about backup locations later on. So you're going to assess your data, and next you're going to assess the risk. What are the risks if I lose my data? What happens if you permanently lose some or all of your data? What would that do to your business? Right? What would be the cost to you of losing your data? So you're going to assess that risk, and then that can be a motivator to take some specific and serious actions to prevent losing that data. And of course, a great way of doing that is to have backups. All right. So you're going to have those backups, and that's going to mitigate the risk a lot. All right. And there are other things that you would, want to do to mitigate, let's say, the access to your data, so forth and so on. But anyway, you're going to do a risk assessment. Now, you're going to have a budget. You have to have a budget. Backup components and whatnot cost money. Backup software costs money. Storage units cost money. So you're going to create a budget, know what your budget is, know what you want to spend, what you can spend to implement a backup plan, and go from there and get the backup solution that best fits your needs and your budget. Because there are a plethora of solutions that you can acquire to do backups, to do disaster recovery, to do business continuity. And we talked about that earlier, how backups are part of that bigger picture. So you're not just thinking backups, you might also be thinking business continuity. You might also be thinking disaster recovery. So you're going to have a business continuity plan, a disaster recovery plan, and you're going to have your backups playing a role in that. And your budget will have to reflect that. Your budget will have to accommodate that, rather. How much you can spend, what kind of system you can have. Okay? Some examples for your budget. Of course, you got to get the backup software. You're going to have to get the backup storage units, or rather that's cloud storage with your monthly service fee from a provider that provides you cloud storage for your backups. You might have an appliance. You're going to have to pay for the appliance. You're going to have staff. You're going to have man hours. That's going to cost you. Maybe you have to hire somebody to do your backups, or maybe a managed services provider to handle your backups like me, or other things. There are other things that you may need with the solution that you end up landing on. I want to bring up network bandwidth in relation to backups because you need to consider this. At least consider your network bandwidth, because when you're backing up, you're going to back up, in most cases, you're going to be backing up to some other location, probably cloud, a cloud service, cloud storage, or maybe you're going to back up to another facility that you have a network connection with, or two, all right? But all that's going to have to flow through your internet connection, your network connection. And you want to ensure that you have sufficient bandwidth to handle your backups. Now, of course, backups are normally done, after hours. But if you have one of those businesses where stuff's happening all the time, you want to make sure that you have the bandwidth for it. And another thing to consider when thinking about bandwidth is that if you have a situation where you have to get your backups to restore to a system from the internet, let's say you had a fire and your backups were burned up just as well as your original machine, the actual machines, then at least you can bring your backups down from the internet, and that's going to take bandwidth. All right. And the more bandwidth you have, the better. The quicker it can come down, the quicker it can go up. So basically, what I'm saying is consider your network bandwidth. Don't come up with this big, elaborate, great backup plan, but then to implement it, you realize that you don't really have enough bandwidth to handle it. Or it'll just take too long for your backups to get to the cloud because you don't have enough bandwidth. All right? Now, I want to talk to you now about the infamous 3-2-1 rule. The 3-2-1 rule is simply this. All right? It's a strategy for your backups. You have 3 copies of your data. All right? You have your original, all right, the primary, and you have 2 copies of your data. All right? So that's the 3. And those 2 copies will be on separate media. And of those 2 copies, one of them has to be off-site. That's the 3-2-1. 3 copies of your data, 2 copies on different media, 1 copy off-site. All right, so what this looks like is you have your computer with your files on it, let's say, or it could be a server with a bunch of shares, and you're going to have a copy of your data you're going to back that up to a NAS unit. All right, let's say a NAS unit or USB hard drive, if you're a small business or it's just your computer or what have you. And then you're going to have another copy off-site, typically in the cloud, like a cloud service, backup service, like Acronis. Acronis has a Acronis Cloud where you can back up to the cloud. You can back up to a local device like a hard drive or a NAS or something. All right. And so that's the 3-2-1 rule. And what happens is it protects you because you have a level of redundancy. Let's say you have a disaster, hard drive crashes and fails. Well, you get a new hard drive and you can restore it right from your local backup, your USB hard drive or your NAS unit. And that'll be fairly quick because it's right there connected to you on your network or your USB. All right, great. But let's say you had a fire or a flood and these 2 devices are destroyed. Well, at least you got your copy. You have a copy of the backup in the cloud or off-site somewhere else. All right. Off-site doesn't necessarily mean the cloud. I just have cloud here to show that's an example. Off-site could just mean taking your backups, which you may have stored on tapes, you may have stored on a hard drive or some type of storage unit, and you take it somewhere else. Or you might have another location that you can transfer over the internet to that other location, your own private network. All right. So that's what this does. It protects you that if something happens to the facility, you still have your backups off site. All right. All right, so that's the 3-2-1 rule, the basic strategy for backing up your data. Now, next, stay tuned. We're going to start talking about the backup plan.